So welcome to part 3 of our 4-part conversation on virginity and the lasting impact on the lives of women. Common question we hear is, what can a grown, experienced woman possibly learn from talking about virginity? To that question, I ask this question. As a woman, how do you relate to the world around you as a sexual being? Sexuality is a natural expression for all creatures. But for many women, it's made to feel dirty, deviant, shameful, even sinful. And what do these responses have to do with virginity? Well, glad you asked, because we explore those connections today with 2 amazing guests. It's with great joy we welcome a woman who is a deeply devoted teacher, speaker, best-selling author of W.O.M.A.N, a woman, a new definition for reclaiming the feminine. She's a rebel and a revolutionary leader dedicated to helping women free themselves from the societal, biological, and personal prisons women have endured for millennia. She inspires women to fully embrace their bodies and to learn from their inner wisdom. Welcome back, our friend, Gina Cloud, to VIRGIN.BEAUTY.B.
I love seeing the both of you. I was so excited when I got the request to join again. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is our pleasure. And we welcome Stephanie Horton, a women's circle facilitator who recently created a social group called The Wild Feminine and a mission to build spaces where the power of feminine energy can bloom. We welcome you, Stephanie, to VIRGIN.BEAUTY.B.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you both for adding for this conversation. So week 1 of this series, we explored the virgin body and how the hymen has been made a line in the sand that once crossed, a woman has lost something that she can never regain. Week 2, the virgin mind, how purity and virtue has become a measure of a good woman versus a bad, the Madonna whore complex. This week, the virgin heart is how women's sexual nature has been either purified or pornified. How women have been made to concern themselves with pleasing others or live with the shame and guilt of putting their pleasure before others. Now, Gina, am I way off view on these things? Did you as a young woman ever find yourself under these limiting expectations of sexuality?
Absolutely not. I mean, hell no. I really truly was born to do this work, and I am and always have been a rebel. And, I was raised Catholic, so there was a lot of dogma around women's bodies and what we were supposed to do and sexuality. And I was such a rebel that I remember my dad once said to me, he was having a generic conversation about premarital sex, and I think I was 12, but this is what I said to him. He was talking about waiting until after you're married, and I said, well, I wouldn't buy a pair of shoes without trying them on. Blasphemy. True. I mean, oh my God, so that's how I thought. And I was like very mouthy about the idea of our freedom. And, I was in Europe in 2013. I was in Rome, my first trip to Rome. And I actually wrote a great blog post called How My Bare Shoulders Kept Me Out of Italy's Churches, because it was summertime and every church I tried to go into wanted me to put a plastic tarp around my shoulders. It was hot as hell. And my point of view was, are you asking the guys to do it too? No. So, no, I'm not going to enter the Vatican. I'm not going to enter. I don't care how beautiful that church is. My body is my temple, and you will not defile it. So I did not set foot into a single church that required me to put a tarp on.
Is that your experience, Stephanie? Were you a rebel too?
My parents would definitely say so, yes. I would like to say I've always been a little bit of a rebel at heart. But societally, no, maybe not. I've been doing actually a lot of reflecting on that lately and just trying to deconstruct a lot of the kind of fear that I've been feeling around just feeling comfortable and being myself and letting other people see who I am at my core. So even though I've always kind of had this fighter and the rebel within me, my soccer team actually growing up was called the Rebels, so it was actually very fitting. A little bit of a, premonition there maybe, prophetic. But it's taken me a while to really embrace that title and to really feel that fire within me. And I honestly, I feel like I'm really just now getting started, and I can't wait to shake things up around here.
Yeah.
So cool. I mean, it's interesting to hear from the two of you, because I also identify as more of a rebel, and seeing societal prescriptions as something to be bended or broken, and that often they've been, purposefully woven throughout different aspects of our life to keep us controlled or keep us in a state of mind of such, I would call it like either self-hatred or self-criticism, or just always just overcritical, that we don't get to really connect with our bodies in the ways that I think a lot of our male counterparts have been encouraged to do so since they were very young. And I want to kind of start off at least a part of our conversation with the book called Pussy, A Reclamation, because it is a fantastic read, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who's listening to the show. But one of the aspects that she talks about in this book is, just as the pussy is the source of all human life, pussy is also the source of each woman's connection to her own life force, her voice, and her sense of internal power. To me, that is so meaningful, because, whether it's when you're younger and you're not given language to talk about your vagina or what happens to your vagina and all of the things that are coming as you go through your adolescence, it becomes this closed off area. So many women in previous generations, they're so almost repulsed by this very important aspect of ourself that doesn't only birth all human life, but is also such a source of our own power and our own connection to self. So I'm wondering how that kind of bit of the book resonates with each of you. And Stephanie, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read the book, but how does that kind of hit you?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't had the chance to read the book yet, but I know it's on my reading list. So I do hope to get to it soon. But it really does resonate with me. I feel like I'm kind of at a little bit of a crossroads in my own personal life and deciding, what do I want to do with my career. Currently, I work in the technology industry, which is very masculine driven. I work at a startup, and the culture and the go and the sales and the money, it hasn't been feeding my feminine side. So I feel like part of the deconstructing that I've been doing is learning how to kind of pull back from that mindset and that way of kind of moving through the world, and deciding, what do I want to do that's maybe, I guess you could say softer, getting in touch with my softer side and getting in touch with my feminine side. And it was really only until recently that I really started to learn about how our creativity as women really comes from the life force that's within our womb. And so just trying to harness that power of not only birth, the capability, if you have a womb, to birth children, but to also build birth art and creations. And if you want to birth a project that changes the world, we have the power to do that. And I think we forget sometimes that we are a part of nature and we're a force of nature. And so I really, really resonate with that. So I can't wait to read the book.
Amazing. How about you, Gina? How's your connection to to that?
Well, it's pretty deep, and it's funny. I know who Mama Gina is, because about 15 years ago, our work people were comparing a lot of the things that we talked about were similar. But I want to wax a bit esoteric, because the connection between the vagina, the yoni, the pussy, whatever word you're comfortable using, and the throat is a very esoteric and ancient one. And that many women, if you look at it, the throat is a narrow tube. The vagina is a tubular, organ, muscular structure. And one of the tenets is that when women are blocked sexually, their voices are also blocked. And when our voices are blocked, when we have trouble speaking up, speaking out, speaking our truth, setting boundaries, we usually shut down sexually. And what does most organized religion do? It enforces the idea of women to remain silent and good. And Chris, I love what you said, purify or pornify. And then you have the versions of, religion suppressing women. That's why I mentioned that story of me in Rome and growing up Catholic, because I don't know of an organized religion that doesn't somehow vilify women's sexuality and encourage us to be nice and to not speak up and speak out in the same kind of a way that a man might, to set boundaries. And in many ways, women need to use our voices in a stronger way to set boundaries, because there's a tremendous amount of repression and abuse, and we need to have very firm boundaries. So, and there's this fulcrum between the voice and the vagina, and it's the heart. And you started out by talking about the heart connection here, and I feel like what happens in that purify, pornify, those ends of the spectrum, and I just love that. That like gave me goosebumps when you said it. The purify aspect wants you to live in your heart and deny the pleasure principle, deny your sexuality, or wait until you're married. And then even then, it's not about your pleasure, it's about procreation. It's not about, I want to enjoy my own body. And then the pornify, which I think we have a lot going on today. I have a 29-year-old daughter, and, I've watched as she's grown into this space, and her friends, not her so much, but there's a mindset of, it's no big deal. Want to have sex? I don't know you. I've just met you. We're drunk. We're high. Let's just hook up. There's no heart connection. And I really feel that actually is so harmful, not just to a woman's body, but more to our psyche. And the idea that the heart and our sexuality come together, because I feel like when our heart and our sexuality make the choice to have sex, it's usually an alignment that promotes a deep connection between the two people. And some people might say on the pornify side and on the purify side probably, well, we don't have to really, it doesn't have to be a thing. It doesn't have to be like this amazing experience every time. And yeah, that's true. But my point is, why would you want to bypass your heart, which in many instances might say to you, don't have sex with this person, and just do it anyway? That's a form of allowing yourself to be raped. I think of it as an energetic kind of rape. Even if you're married to somebody, even if you're in a relationship with somebody, if you don't want to have sex and you do it anyway, there's a form of betrayal going on there between the body, the heart, and the psyche, and the collective consciousness of women overall. So to me, this is a really powerful thing, and that it's a point of entry into life. And our life is the most important piece in that, So that's a really, really deep subject matter.
So it goes back to conditioning. As a man, I don't have any of these reservations. All of these steps that a woman have to take in order to enjoy what she is intrinsically given to enjoy her body. There's so many barriers you have to overcome to free yourself, to open yourself to your own pleasure. And I know, Gina, for you, it's different because you seem to be born with a direct connection to that part of yourself. But in the women that you work with, how do they translate these barriers, or do they even see them?
No, I feel they do see them. If they don't see them initially, like when I start coaching with them, it comes clear pretty quickly. But the way the barriers present is there's a lot of physiological issues like extreme, premenstrual stuff, even some autoimmune stuff. But a lot of times it's cysts, issues within the reproductive biology that they've struggled with. And then we start to unpack it, and there's just so many tears because there's a realization of what in their life put that there, what conditioning put that there, what experiences they've had or violations they've had that put that there. They're aware of it subconsciously, which is why they end up finding me to work with. But when it becomes conscious for them, it's a tidal wave of emotions, but yet it's still a challenge to step outside. Like Stephanie, you were talking about being in the tech industry, massively, just tremendous masculine frequency, how everything is done. Just the pace of it even is completely masculine. And you're probably, there are more women in tech now, but I've worked with women in your industry, and it's really challenging for them to let themselves be soft, be silent, be still, to get away from the mind. The mind is the issue with all of us. Our society is so mentally driven right now. So it's something that it's an undercurrent of knowing, I think, that all women have. And then when it becomes conscious, then there's just this desire to go home.
That's so beautiful, Gina. And it's interesting that you mentioned cysts. The past couple weeks, I've actually been dealing with an ovarian cyst on my right side. It's the first time I've ever had one. A couple weeks ago, I ended up in the hospital on a Saturday just because of the pain and vomiting. And
Wow.
I ended up back in the hospital this past week, and it hasn't ruptured or anything. But, I was kind of digging into maybe the more spiritual reasons or metaphysical reasons behind the cyst. And, the right side is kind of the side of the masculine and the left being the feminine. And, I've been kind of seeing this as the word purification has been coming up for me a lot. I don't know if I really resonate with the term purity, but I like to think of it more of like a cleansing of, just trying to dispel that wounded masculine energy in my body, and it's my body's way of just kind of dispelling that. Because I've also, the past couple of years have been on, different types of prescribed medications like antidepressants, anti-anxiety, Adderall for my ADHD. And over the past couple of months, with me wanting to kind of learn how to move through the world in my own kind of softer, more feminine way, I've with my doctor's, permission, have tapered off all of my medications. And, now it's just very interesting timing, of course, now that I feel like the cyst has come up on my masculine side and is now shrinking, hopefully, to the point where it'll just go away. But it's a very interesting point. I love it.
Can I share something with you, because you brought this up? So when the reproductive issues happen, and relationship to the last question that I was answering, there are, and Christiane Northrup has influenced my work a lot 25 years ago when I first started doing this, but she found in her practice as an OB-GYN who has become a very spiritualized doctor when it comes to women's issues. The ovaries and issues with the ovaries are related to issues with others. For instance, I don't know if you're a people pleaser, but women who tend to have ovarian issues, it's about other people. It's about your relationship with other people and giving over to other people. When cysts happen or things happen within the uterus, it's about how you feel about yourself. And also, I'm going to be very bold because that's just the way that I am and do it. I want to suggest, I have these 10 gynecology principles, and my first one is you are your own best doctor. No one knows your state of health and wellness better than you do. Your doctor's a team player and not the boss of you. And I am extremely vocally outspoken about the westernization, the Western pharmaceutical model that makes women's bodies their cash cow. They medicalize us, antidepressants. I've worked with women who, this one woman came to me, she wanted to work on weight. She had read one of my blog posts, Joy, the Key to Weight Loss. We talked about her weight in one session. We went through her life. She got off of her birth control. She got off of her antidepressants on her own. I didn't even tell her to. She lost the weight 12 weeks later because we went into the heart of the matter. And so I say to you, a lot of the drugs that you're probably on, because I see this so consistently with women, are part of what's blocking your ability to go home and re-experience that natural feminine frequency and flow that's in you. So, but the ovarian stuff, it always resonates. Like I have goosebumps. It always resonates with women. Where it lands in your body, it's just the body never lies, and it's so profound.
Just picking up on what you said there, what both of you have said, and this concept of even when you're in a relationship, that when you have sex, when you don't really want to, that it's a betrayal of your body. And I really want to dig into this because to me, this is the foundation for sacred sexuality for women. And I think what organized religion has tried to sell to women is that their version of sexuality is the only way for the female body to be sacred in its sexual form. And that is pretty much through abstinence until you want to procreate. But to me, like all of how awful that is and wanting to unpack that too. But to me, to really understand what's happened in our very pornified culture, where women are feeling increasingly pressure to look absolutely perfect. There's all of the, things on apps and stuff to make you look a different way and your eyes are bigger. Girls young as 12 wanting surgeries to make their eyes look different and their cheeks higher. And that like that there's so much time tied to how our bodies look to other people that with that type of time investment, it becomes, this is the main thing that I'm here for, because I have put so much of my life into this being the main thing that people see about me. And not only does it stop there, when you're actually in a position where you do genuinely want to have a connection with somebody and you want to have sex with them, I've talked to so many women that they're not even present in that moment. They're thinking about, how do I look right now? How do I look right now? Not what I'm feeling. Am I connected to my body? Am I enjoying this moment, this experience with another individual that I've decided to share my body with? So to me, when it comes to really thinking about a sacred sexuality for women, when you have this hyper-pornified culture that's saying hookup culture is fine, we can do it just like guys. Yep. You know, if guys can do it that way, then, you know, equality is for us to be able to do it that same way. When truly, you know, as was said already, entering into a woman's body, entering into the closest access point to create life is a completely different experience. Yep. So I'm wondering your thoughts on sacred sexuality, and like, Stephanie, how is that shaping for you, or what has your experience been with, like, for you in your life and I believe that is such a unique experience for each woman. There's going to be women listening to the show that do want to wait till marriage. And if that is truly what is right for you, then that's what's right for you, right? And so I'm just wondering what sacred sexuality has meant to you, Stephanie, and how it's evolved.
Yeah, no, I love the topic. And it's been something I've been thinking a lot about recently, and actually talking about it with my partner who is male. And, you know, we were having conversations about, you know, pretty candidly about how we can improve our sex life, and maybe just changing both of our approaches to sex, which, you know, for the longest time has been, you know, at least in my mind, as far as, you know, conditioning from society and, you know, previous relationships or partners, you know, I'm just there so the guy can finish, and then that's just it, and it's done, you know. And instead of, you know, just trying to change, you know, my mindset, and just knowing that my partner is also okay with sex being more of, you know, as it should be, more of a connection. It's sacred. It's, you know, when two become one, as they say. And so, you know, just letting him know, and him, you know, letting me know that he's okay with us having sex without even an orgasm on either part being an end game. But, you know, of course, his, you know, he still says, of course, he, you know, would like that for me, at least at the end, you know, and he's okay kind of not finishing because I think at some point, you know, actually, I don't even know where I was going with that. But
because,
a little bit of a word salad there.
Because he loves you, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
How about you, Gina?
Well, first, everything you just said, oh my God, you're so my sister. I mean, these are things I really talk about. And the idea that we as women, you know, the patriarchy has been so effective. And I always like to clarify when I say patriarchy, because some men, when they hear that word, they think I'm talking about men. I'm talking about the societal construct of patriarchy and the repression of women and the domination of women within it. And I just feel like they've been so effective that we run around focused on our appearance as the only thing that's valuable in us. They don't even have to try anymore. The beauty industry, if we did away with the beauty industry and OBGYN, that branch of medicine, women would be in control of their lives, their hearts, their bodies, 100%. And because it's the influence that has on us from the time we're little girls. And the workshops I've done with little girls, it starts as early as 10 years old. They want a diet. They're looking to change how they look. Because I have this tenet that a woman's body is not her power. The power comes through our body. And it's the exploitation of these bodies that over-sexualizes us, that pornifies us, that does all of that. So I just had to acknowledge what a great bit that was that you said. It was just really, it's just so on point and so important. For me, sacred sexuality is something that I define, right? And every woman should define that for herself and what that means. for me, it's got to be from my heart. I have never been able to be a casual sex person. It's always felt like something that was wrong to me. I think maybe once or twice I did, and I felt dirtier than I've ever felt in my life, not from a place of society's judgment, but because I felt like I violated my temple, because this person that I just had a really powerful experience with, something that's so powerful that it can create life, I wasn't really connected to him before I did that. And it felt so gross. So I would rather go without sex, because sex for me is something that is an alignment of body, mind, and spirit. And to have it just be an act is so one-dimensional. And I've studied and experienced, I love Tantra, but Eastern Tantra, because what we've done is pornify Tantra here in the West. We've made it almost like soft porn. Nobody really understands what Tantra is. And it's driven by the heart. It's not about, getting off. It's not about whether you have orgasms or he has orgasms. It's not about any of that. It's about the alignment in the heart. And from that place, the explosion that can happen with our genitals is incredible, but that's not what it's about. So to me, I would rather go without than to defile the sacredness of my own temple.
I envy your daughter having a mother that can teach her these ways. I think and feel saddened for how many women do not have any instruction as to what this can mean to them and how they can present themselves in a way that looks after their own well-being. Like it breaks my heart to even think of that.
Yeah.
Right. This interesting. You brought up this idea of hookup culture, and I had a quote here from someone who said, "As soon as feminists had won sexual liberation, it was reframed as sexual availability for men."
Wow. That's deep. And it's true. And it's true. And it's the subversiveness of how patriarchy, and that's why it's like, I keep thinking in my blogs, these are all free, everybody can go check them out, but I wrote one called Wake Up Your Sleeping Beauty and Stop Exploiting Yourself. I always have these bizarre titles that get downloaded. I don't even they don't even come from me. But what you just said, like it's the idea that it's our idea, but it's not our idea. We've been programmed. And I, having identified as a feminist, pushing against my father in Catholicism, I've had this conversation with many women that I know lately about how feminism destroyed our feminine in many ways, and it was I think it was an organized push to deconstruct the family unit. And so many women I know who went for the job and are super successful are lonely. They actually are afraid to admit, I want to get married. I would like to stay home. I would like to have kids and stay home. Oh my God, I can't say that out loud because I'm supposed to be a feminist, right? And it's destroyed some of the essence of feminine. And it's so radical. And it always starts in the school systems. It starts in the universities. And the programming happens. And then we just lose touch with who we really are. And it's insidious because once, poof, it gets thrown out there and the patriarchy does its thing, then we think it's our idea. Oh, we think it's our idea, like Heather said, oh yeah, I want to have sex as much as men. I love porn. No, you don't. It's been a seed planted because if you were aligned with that essence, and if men were too, I do coaching work with men, and 100% of the men that come to me to help with porn addiction. And because they don't even want that to be how they see sexuality. It's just destroying masculine, feminine, and whether you're gay, straight, whatever, there's always a masculine, feminine polarity. Otherwise, you'd just be friends. But it's destroying that. And men are waking up to it. It's young men, because most of the really young men, all my clients are in their late 20s, early 30s. They all learned about sexuality through porn. And it's just it's epidemic. And I feel like it's up to us, we women, to reclaim feminine as sacred. Because if we say no, what are they going to do? We know that there are horrible men out there that won't take no for an answer. But if we stepped into our power and we reclaimed the sacredness of our body and we really honored that, we could reprogram the masculine around us to look at sexuality and women completely differently.
I find it very interesting to think about how, because to me, feminism has gone through so many waves that we know about, and that, you know, everything from the suffragettes and just becoming our own people under the law, all of that background.
Wow.
But
Yep.
for me, in like the feminism that I identify with, like the core root of it is the belief that a woman should be able to decide for herself, that she has agency and she has the autonomy to act on that agency and to respect that for other women. And I do think that in the different waves of feminism, it was, well, we have to be in leadership roles and we have to go up, up, up and up so that we can start to change the world and the world can have a different, hopefully a different trajectory. And I do believe that that's important. And I do believe that is some women's path. Is it every woman's path? No. But as, you know, as was being said, what I find so heartbreaking is when I feel like we have come so far in certain ways, but I also have so many women in my life that can't feel empowered to want to stay home with their kids, to want to step into their real softness with their partner and like be taken care of, to take on more of some of those traditional feminine roles. So it just really hits me that it all kind of comes back full circle around a woman's sexuality, for that too to be something that she truly defines for herself.
Heather, you just said something that was, I'm afraid it's going to fly out of my brain. When you talked about feminism and the core root of it, you made me realize that the root of feminism, and this is a paradox, is virginity. Because the definition of virgin is a woman sovereign unto herself. And that's what feminism at its core is trying to gift us, right?
Hallelujah.
I was like, woo, that came through me, right? So that's why it was going to go away. It wasn't a Gina thought. But there's the circle, you know, a woman sovereign unto herself is a virgin. And here we are, you know, that's what feminism I agree with you. I'm the same. But what feminism has become, I want no part of. I really do. You know, feel that way. So I just had to say that because you just brought that forward. So
No, I'm happy you went there, because this series that we're doing, Heather and I, that is the final step, right? It's the virgin spirit. It's not a physical thing.
right.
It's not a thing of the mind. It's something that is spiritual within everyone, and you can live that your whole life. Right? It's not a line you cross once a hymen is broken.
Right.
Right?
The
So,
true
yes.
concept that there is that part of self that is always just for you and is evergreen just for you.
I like that, evergreen.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are talking about, I want to read you some statistics that you've covered off. This is from a women's course that I kind of snuck into. So, as a lone
I
man.
love the way. What was your name? What name did you register under? What name did you use? Christina?
I love it.
So these are some statistics to back up everything you guys have just said. Okay, so there's a before or contrast of things here. Women control over 22 trillion in global spending. Women are the primary breadwinners in many American homes. Women are graduating in higher numbers from college, more than men in many cases. Women are becoming the most valued employees in many corporations. And in our society, women have freedom to have any kind of relationship they choose. Yet, in the same breath, research shows that women are more lonely and depressed than ever before. 20% of women are on antidepressants. 90% of women have unhealthy relationships with their bodies and food. 50% of women are living alone without a partner or without support. 50% of women who are having sex are having less sex than their grandmothers. Real. But we're all in this silo of self, and we don't understand what is going on around us, to the masses, to women everywhere. And that's why we have these conversations. it's to bring it to the conscience, the conscious mind, so you can look at your situation, look at yourself, and know that you're not alone in this. This is epidemic for women right now.
Yeah, it is.
To build off of, those those thoughts, and I think that it ties nicely because of some of the transitions that we're going through in society. But we love to ask our guests, and for you two, I'd like to ask it within the context of women's sexuality. What does feminine mean to you? And I'll kick it off with Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you. I love that question. In the terms of sexuality, the word feminine to me means letting go of a lot of anger and resentment that I think is stored in my body, which I've been working towards, and I think making pretty good progress. But letting go of that anger and resentment, and just tuning into my desire, coming back to nature and what I like and what I don't like, and just kind of doing a lot of relearning. But when it comes to the word feminine, for me, it's being receptive and softening and letting go of that anger and tuning into my body more, into what makes me me.
What is that anger for you? Is it something that can be quantified? Is it something that you can put on paper? What does that mean for you, that angry piece?
So for me, a lot of anger, I think, has come from definitely childhood wounds. And, if we're getting specific as far as with my parents, that I didn't realize until more recently that I was still holding on to. I didn't realize that it was kind of ingrained so deeply in my DNA. And my husband and we got married almost 2 years ago, and I had an ectopic pregnancy when I was 22 back in 2012. And we want kids so badly, and just having trouble conceiving. And I actually met Heather on a women's retreat last year, and the first full day of the retreat, we did a Temescal ceremony and made an offering to the fire before stepping in. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, I want to get rid of the anger and resentment that is still being stored in my body. And I feel like my ancestors heard that and have responded and have been helping me. And so on my path to also becoming a mother, it's healing that mother wound, and healing the wounds, of my father, and probably his before his, and my mom's, mom before hers. And, just trying to heal that ancestral line is really important to me before also becoming a mother, because that's something that I don't want passed into the DNA genetics of my children.
It's very powerful. Mm-hmm. How about you, Gina?
So feminine in relationship to sexuality, when you say that, I feel all yummy in my body. Like, to me, I do, because it's a frequency for me in terms of my sexuality. It's being naked and loving being naked, especially being naked outside, and that connection to nature, and it's surrender, and it's vulnerability, and it's wide openness, becoming a magnetic portal, literally, for my lover. And there's just, it's like water in the desert for me is what feminine is. And feminine can be, I have a term I call fierce feminine, where it's like somebody's messing with my kid. There is no man, I don't care how masculine he is or how fierce and strong he is, that's going to touch fierce feminine, because there's a frequency in that. That's still feminine. Some people think feminine is weak or, passive. Passivity, I see more in terms of surrender and vulnerability. We become receptive. The feminine, feminine and masculine are just, it's the yin and the yang. It's these principles in the universe that we all have. But I feel a woman's body embodies these things when we tap into our feminine. And it's a very it's like the end chapter in my book, which is nectar. It's like, and it's also seduction. It's flirting in a really beautiful way. Seduction in Latin just means to lead astray. So it's like, want to come over here? You know, it's like that's what seduction is, you know, and adorning myself, you know, instead of making it specific to a moment. And it doesn't have to be that. It can be something in the moment that I feel inspired by my partner that drops me into that feminine, you know. So it's something I can access. I can just feel it when you say it. Feminine and sexuality, like they just go together, and there's a strength in that. And Stephanie, I just wanted to mention, because I'm just sharing these tidbits as they come up, you know, anger is the hardest emotion for women to deal with. I always say women get, meaning allowed by society, every emotion except anger. Men get none except anger. And you watch men process anger so easily, so quickly, and they're done with it. And it's something I really work with women on a lot, because it's so in the way, and it's such a difficult emotion, you know, for women, because we're told to be nice and don't speak up. Again, it goes back to these boundaries, throat, vagina, expressing yourself. And, but, you know, our sexuality is a force. And it's a really beautiful force. Yeah.
I like what you said about anger, because when I think of anger, I think of it as a physical expression. And women aren't allowed any physical expression except for sexuality. So why would we allow you anger?
You know,
Right?
it's interesting that you because when I think of it as a woman, like guys will punch walls, throw shit, you know, it's like that kind of stuff goes on. But to me as a woman, it's about a boundary enforcement, and it always comes through my voice. And so because it comes through my voice, it doesn't go into my body. So I feel like when we don't express it, and men are just much easier about, no, I don't want to do that. It's like, so the vocal part I think is always there. And I think when men hit a certain threshold, it does get really physical. And this is general, you know, in general, because there's men who'll do that, men who won't do that. But I think for women, we don't ever get it out of our mouths. So it turns inward. Most of our stuff turns inward, and it goes into our biology, and our reproductive biology in particular. And that's, Stephanie, that's probably 90% of why you're struggling with getting pregnant, you know? And so you're doing the work. You're doing the work, and it's going to heal you. But I always feel like it's needing to say, because most women are terrified of saying something to the person, whether it's a boss or, you know, a relative or a child or a partner. They're terrified of saying how they really feel. And so they sugarcoat it and they dumb it down if they're courageous enough to say anything. But that 30% that you sugarcoated or you didn't say is going to be in your body. So there's this, you've got to get it out. You've got to get it all out.
I want to add to that sexuality, a great portion of the success of finding and gaining pleasure is communicating, vocalizing what it is you want and don't want. And again, a lot of women are held back from actually expressing that. They feel shame, or what they don't deserve, or they're not going to be heard, whatever it might be.
Or
it's
they
interesting.
feel awkward.
Yeah, right? So it's interesting. These things connect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to bridge that too. I think another layer of that, and I want to touch on this with all of you here, is around pleasure with yourself, masturbation, getting to know your own body. And one of the things that we got to do at this Wild Woman retreat, which was so fantastic, is to do things that happened in the 70s where, yes, we got a little mirror and we got to know her individually. We were all in our own separate rooms to have that moment. And to really, like, I loved what our facilitator, like the mindset that she put us in before we went to do that, because she said, I invite you to go in, no matter what you see, to tell her that she's beautiful, that exactly as she is this amazing work of art that is just for you. It's your pleasure center. It's a portal. It's a life force for other beings, but also for yourself. And to go in with that mindset helped me immensely, because I think, again, when it comes to body image, body shaming, it's so easy to go into critical mode right off the bat. And honestly, I saw her in a different way than I've ever seen her before. And I have loved her differently since. That has made an impact with my own, understanding my own body better, the more that I've been able to really tap into that, it's provided me with the language to be able to say that to a partner, to be able to know not just this one thing at this time on this angle is the only way it's going to happen, but to try to find some other ways, because there's some fun in that, and we deserve to, you know, have that fun and exploration. But, you know, with whatever people's comfortability is, just if you could talk around your thoughts on, you know, really that alone time with your body and with your sexuality. Either of you would sound great.
Okay, so I have always, and I think I discovered my sexuality and orgasms when I was about 4 years old. And it was like amazing. I'm very grateful, although I don't know that it would have had an impact because this is the work I was here to do. I think my grandmother discovered me. I had fallen asleep with my hand between my legs after I don't know how many orgasms. And because I was raised Catholic, I'm amazed that she didn't say anything. My father didn't try to shame me. I'm telling you, it wouldn't have worked. I just know it wouldn't have worked, them trying to shame me. It would have probably just made me do it more because of my nature, even at 3 or 4 years old. But as an adult woman, I've always found masturbation boring. It's like it's a physical release. It's not like for me, the good stuff is with a partner. It's the tantra. It's the explosion of, you know, light energy and all that good stuff. So it's like a release. And I'm also very like, I know women are really into the toys. And I'll never forget, I had this one boyfriend who was an amazing lover, and we had done a lot of tantra together. And when we split up, and we're still friends to this day, but he was with a woman after me, and he said, Gina, he goes, I don't know what to do with this. She's addicted to toys. And I can't compete with the toys. And I feel like that's happened. I call them like jackhammer vibrators. It desensitizes our, you know, our vaginal tissue, and we need more and more stimulation. And the subtleties and those channels that are amazing when you take your time to get there, they get, you know, they get overridden. And at one point I said to him, I said, well, maybe you should just have a menage a toy and see if you can work around it. So, you know, I said, see if you can like slowly take the toys away from her. But I find my pleasure is, I think, private pleasure. I think, you know, your personal pleasure, masturbation, whatever you want to call it, self-pleasure, is something everybody should do. And because if you have to be comfortable with your own body, I just know, like for me, you know, some women love masturbating, and I'm like, it's not my favorite thing because it just feels one-dimensional, and I really want more. And you could argue, well, you know, you could be more like a lover to yourself. I'm like, well, yeah, I can, but there's this whole other thing missing, and I can't provide that for myself, and I really am not into plastic. So for me, I think every woman, and it's interesting, Heather, because I've taught a workshop for years called The Sacred Facts of Life for young girls, and I get them right before they get their first period. And because moms don't really know how to have this conversation because they're also hung up on their own stuff, and they don't want to pass that on. But that's one of the exercises I give these young girls, is to take a mirror and look and see, and also to help them recognize all the things in nature that look like the vulva, you know, the shells and the fruits and I used to make a fruit sculpture of the reproductive anatomy. I took a papaya for the uterus, and I would use like celery stalks for the fallopian tubes, and I would put little almonds for the ovaries, and a bell pepper for the vagina, and I would take like a carrot and carve it out, and I would toothpick everything together, so the cervix, and they could see, and I would take like oranges and make the labia, or plum slices and make the inner and outer labia, because I was teaching them about their body. And this was a visual representation through nature. And then when I talked about periods, I could also show them how a tampon goes inside, because the bell pepper was hollow. So it was like creating this relationship with our bodies as nature, you know. And so, but having them look at them first, because all the messages now, and I started this workshop like 20 years ago, and it's a totally different universe what these girls are getting as messages about their bodies right now, you know. And I'm sure they're you know, I'm sure masturbation is high on the list of things that women are doing, or girls are doing, but from what place from within? Like, how is it being seen? And I think when it's a sacred experience with yourself, like I know some people, you know, I've encouraged the idea, you know, light candles, make a date with yourself for that, if that's really what you love to do, you know. And just, it's different for everybody. And like for me, it's just not my thing.
I can't wait to get a fruit salad from you.
Oh my God. The best part is at the end where they're all diffused, because when they walk in, they don't want to be there, because it's like, oh my God, we don't want to have this conversation. And they get so excited about the end of it. They're all happy to be there, and they eat the fruit sculpture. They eat it. And it's like, oh, I want, I want it's amazing. And it changes something in them. So yeah, that was fun.
I'll have to go see what I have in my fridge.
I love it. How about for you, Stephanie? Like, what was that practice like for you, or like your own experience or thoughts on that?
I've always actually been pretty comfortable with masturbation. I think I first discovered my sexuality maybe like 10, 11, something like that, maybe a little bit younger. But I've also gone through, after the retreat where, we did the exercise with the mirror, I started to, explore different ways of masturbation and trying to use toys less, because I realized how desensitized it might really be down there. And I found a lot of success with that recently. But one thing, kind of going back to the retreat and kind of in that same workshop that we were in, Heather, one thing that our host also mentioned that I really, really love, that's always stuck with me, is that, and actually, Gina, kind of ties into something you mentioned earlier about, giving your body or asking your body for permission, even if it's with a touch from your own hand or from a toy, that even though you think that, your vagina or your yoni, it's yours because it's part of your body, it kind of has, the mind of its own, and it has its own response to touch and other stimuli. And that, during masturbation, it's also really healthy to just ask your yoni for permission to be touched. And that's something that I've always, not always, but, it's stuck with me since then as well.
Very cool.
I want to ask a controversial question.
Oh,
Oh,
I love Chris's controversial stuff.
Has any women on this panel ever faked it? And why?
Just wanted it to be over.
No.
Never. Rebel to the end.
I
And
admire that so much.
Part of it is I've never had to. Like I said, I started really early, had relationship with my body, and I chose wisely, the men that I was in relationship with. But for me, if I didn't want to have sex, I just said I didn't want to have sex, because if I wanted to have sex, I would have an orgasm. It's almost like that agreement to enter into that space, no pun, was my way of allowing my body to open and do that. But I've always felt like that would be a same kind of betrayal, to lie about. It's almost like saying I'm ashamed that I didn't and I have to, so I'm going to say that's my thinking. And I don't know if other women feel that way about it. I suspect that's a similar thing, or like there's something wrong with me because I didn't, like I'm supposed to. I really feel there's a woman who I interviewed when I used to do my own podcast. She doesn't teach in the U.S. She's in Europe, and her name is Diana Richardson. And many of her books, Tantric Orgasm for Women, I interviewed her a few times, and she really teaches the idea that there is no end game. Orgasm is not meant to be the goal of sexual congress. It's not meant to be the goal. It's the intimacy that's the goal. And men, so many men that would come through her workshops were so happy and relieved that they didn't have to perform. She even had stuff like soft entry techniques where a man doesn't have an erection and he enters and you just lie together and you still have that, you've got that vibration going, and maybe it turns into an erection and it turns into an actual sexual experience. But the idea that intercourse is the be all and end all is part of the problem, So for me, if I don't want to, I don't. And I can see that upset look or whatever. And also for a part of me, when I'm in a relationship and I don't want to be sexual, it's either I'm having unresolved issues with my partner, or I'm in a place with myself that is unresolved. And that space, because I feel like our sexual energy is a place of joy. It's when we are open, and that's that feminine again. That's the receptivity and the magnetism and the openness. That is joy. And so when I feel suppressed or repressed within my relationship, when I say that, I mean like there's an issue between us, not that, and maybe there's, as outspoken as I am, sometimes there's really vulnerable things to talk about that, I've said the 70% and I still have 30% more to go. And I know I'm going to say it, but I haven't said it yet. So I'm in this place of withhold within myself and withhold with him, So it's, I don't do that. I don't do faking.
I definitely have, but I want to bring up that our education system totally screws women over when it comes to this. Like in my sex ed, I learned what happens with a male orgasm and that I'm going to get a period. Like that's literally what I learned. Like nothing about a female orgasm at all. And I think that alone, I think that, something that we're talking about more as a society is what they're calling the orgasm gap, like the gender pay gap. And honestly, it's like we've already talked about with porn being so much of how people, especially young people these days, are learning how sex can work. Orgasms in 99% of porn are not a woman having an actual real orgasm. No. What is happening to her does not actually lead to her getting to that place. So for me, it was, I've been exploring my body for a long time since I was also very young, like the two of you, and getting to know my pleasure centers, but actually being able to get mentally in my heart, in my body, to a place that I'm understanding my orgasm and can get there. Even that terminology I kind of am frustrated with because it's a process. Right. But I do think that, I'm glad that I was able to get to a point where when the first time it happened, I was like, oh shit, fuck yeah. I should swear. And Christopher likes to say, we've said this on another one, thinking about the concept of virginity, just to throw it out there because there's so many backwards ways of thinking of it. The first time that she has her own orgasm, which I just love just reconceptualizing the whole thing in general. But I'm very passionate about changing sex ed to be more inclusive of what women orgasms are, and that ultimately being about honoring women and honoring the feminine.
Yep. And boundaries. Boundaries are such a huge part of that. When we say yes, when we say no, and being able to verbalize what we actually want and having the confidence to say, and a lot of it is about our relationship to, what is your relationship to the word no? What's your relationship to the word yes? Most women have a really weird relationship with the word yes. Weird's the wrong word, but yes, people pleasers. So a lot of it is yes, yes, yes. And to say no to someone, and I teach this because I'll say, don't say no because no because means you're rationalizing something. Just say no. It's really powerful when someone says, "Can you do?" No, and you don't have to be mean about it. You just say no. If they want to say why, say, "I just don't want to." That's so incredibly difficult for women. Insanely difficult. Because if you say no, you've got to justify it. Just no. I actually had on my website at one point, it was just a free boundary challenge. And it was 4 days of like, what's your relationship to yes? What's your relationship to no? What's your relationship to yes, I want to, and no, I don't want to? And just going through your day and observing when someone asks something of you, how you respond, how you really want to respond, and also when you want something, and your ability to acknowledge yes, like, oh, do you want a cup of coffee? Can I bring you back a cup of coffee? And you go, no, because you're thinking, oh, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to, like so many women have said, yeah, could you do that for me? That would be great. Thank you. So I feel like that whole piece with our sexuality is wrapped up in boundaries. The boundaries foisted on us by the purity and the pornification. Purification and pornification, I love that, Chris, so much, you have no idea. But the boundaries that get foisted on us from those two places that are not authentic and genuine to women, the consciousness that we are, and woman, the individual that we are.
Mm-hmm. This has been so wonderful.
Oh my God, I love this. This is such a great idea to do this panel and to just riff like this.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
I can't wait to read your book, Gina.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Well,
it's a
tell us
quick
about
read.
it. Tell us about it. Tell Stephanie where she can get it. Come on, let us.
You
let
can
us
get
know.
it on Amazon, or you from my website. If you go to GinaCloud.com, there's a tab on there for the book, and that way you can trip over my blog. I love my blogs because I always say I didn't write any of it. Everything is downloaded. I go back and read this stuff, and I go, "This is really good, thank you." You know, and I'm like, I think it comes from the collective feminine consciousness throughout the centuries. I really believe that's who writes. That's who channels through me. So GinaCloud.com, the book is there, the blog is there, or you can go to Amazon and type in, and the title is "Woman: A New Definition for Reclaiming the Feminine."
And Stephanie, tell us about what you're doing and what your plans are and what we can look forward to from you.
Yeah, so I have surrendered the plans for my women's groups entirely to the universe. I have no idea what the future will hold, but we've had 2 events so far locally. I live in Texas. We made vision boards at the end of last year, and recently, about 2 weeks ago, had our first women's circle. And so hopefully I'd love to turn that into a physical space in my small town. There's been a lot of conversations online about things like third spaces, so I hope to build something like that for kind of the feminine collective here in my town.
Beautiful.
That sounds
Fantastic.
great.
It's been our honor to have both of you guest with us and share with us such authentic, real, raw, right, conversation. It means the world to us to have your trust, to share your heart with us. We'll never, ever take that for granted. Thank you both.
And I want to thank you both, and Stephanie, to you in a second, but the 2 of you are so special. When we did the first interview, I just feel such a kindred alignment with both of you and your hearts and your intentions and the beauty that you bring to these conversations. There's very few people out there doing podcasting and interviews like this, and it's so deep and rich, and it's real and it's esoteric, and it's hard to bring those pieces together. And I just love you guys. I mean, anytime. And Stephanie, it was really a pleasure to connect with you and to hear what you're doing. And I love the Wild Women thing, because that's actually the W in woman is wild in my book. The W stands for wild.
Oh, I love that.
So we're kindred spirit as well. And this has just fed my soul. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Gina and Christopher and Heather. Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing.
Each one of these are so special in their own way, and the ways that we dip into the mind, the body, the heart, and then next week will be the spirit. The interlacing that's happened in each one, and it was evident here today as well. It really just makes me feel so aligned to my purpose. So I definitely feel the kindred spirits
Amen,
with all of
sister.
you.
Yeah.
So thank you for
There
both
you
of your
go.
time.
And come on back next week, 2 more sensational speakers and guests to share another rung and another level of this conversation. And you have been listening to
The Virgin
The Beauty.
and the Bitch.
Find us, like us, share us. Please come on back, engage, talk to us. Let us know how you feel about these topics. We'd love to hear from you.